With me is my co-host, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, businessman Anderson Jolly, former CSA General Secretary Alvin Thomas, and Miss Marceline Edwards. Good evening to all of you. Tonight's discussion will be about where is CARICOM headed? What are its priorities as compared to the vision of the framers of the West Indies Federation? Will there ever be full Caribbean integration that allows the region to speak with one voice on issues like investments, on trade, security, diplomatic relations, etc.? And what has CARICOM actually accomplished? Does CARICOM represent regional unity or political theater? What are the implications for state sovereignty and Caribbean sovereignty in this new world order? And what is the role of the RSS? Why are some Caribbean leaders posturing on regional platforms for domestic political optics rather than substantive policy advancement? And do national election cycles undermine long-term regional commitments such as food security, removal of intra-regional trade barriers, crime, and border security coordination? We will have some follow-up questions, or if you like, some talking points based on the submissions of our panelists. So we look forward to the contributions of Justice Dr. Irving Andre, former CSA General Secretary Alvin Thomas, businessman Anderson Jolly, and Miss Marceline Edwards, and of course the callers and viewers on the radio, Facebook, and YouTube on that topic. So as usual, we invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, to help us give our usual huge shout out and big thank you to our farmers, healthcare providers, our frontline workers, police and fire officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, and public and private sector patriots and friends of Dominica at home and abroad. We welcome each and every one of you, each and every Dominican and friend of Dominica, to the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are, in every nook and cranny, in every village, in every community, at home in Dominica, in the region, and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, for keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, on the console, for directing the traffic. We will take your calls. As you know, the people's voice is always a priority on Q, on the Global View on Q. So call us anytime during the program. Lambi or Sherwin will signal us when you call. My co-host and guest panelists will expand and deliver on their own ideas on tonight's topic. As usual, each panelist will divide their contributions into five-minute presentations. We'll also have an opportunity to make a closing remark. So I go now to Justice Dr. Irving Andre for his first 5-minute opening comments on tonight's topic. Dr. Andre. I think your mic is muted. You need to
Yes, let me say good evening to the panelists. It's a pleasure to be with you, distinguished company. Mr. G, for organizing this broadcast, and for your listeners who are hopefully listening to what we have to say, and hopefully they can comment on what we did not say. The whole question of CARICOM has to be placed in a certain historical context. From the 19th century, the British were very much involved in trying to consolidate or reduce its expenses in governing these islands. They came up with various schemes. The whole question of having one entity, political that is, although there was an indigenous movement in the islands to have so-called representative government. Dominica played a great part in that movement, both in 1925 and in 1932. In 1932, there was a famous conference in Dominica attended by the political heavyweights throughout the Eastern Caribbean. However, what they proposed was a limited form of representation, dictated by, for example, a limited number of persons who could participate. They certainly did not advocate for universal adult suffrage. That was to come way into the future on about 1951, when the first election in Dominica on the universal adult suffrage was fought. But in the 50s, there was a significant step forward in terms of unity. That was the West Indies Federation. The West Indies Federation, founded in 1962, after Jamaica said enough is enough, Trinidad followed. Now, the causes of their departure, in my view, continues to haunt the islands like the plague. Jamaica was afraid of being inundated by small islanders. Trinidad was afraid of becoming the mecca for so-called small islanders, but not having the ability to sell its manufactured goods to the other islands in this federation. So from the start, as way back in the 1950s, you had these tensions, you had these collisions. In my view, those collisions have continued to this day. In the late 1960s, well, there was an attempt by the small islands to form a small federation without Jamaica and Trinidad. The initiative was called and dubbed the Little Eight. Suffice it to say, it funded. Then the whole question of self-government came up. We got that status in '67. And then the islands formed CARIFTA, which is an intended organization in which trade on generous terms would be fostered among members of CARIFTA. That gave way to CARICOM in the late 60s and early 1970s, again, an organization designed to forge Caribbean unity. Where is that initiative as we speak? It is foundering on the rocks of despair. Because at least in the 60s and the 70s, you had messianic leaders, whether it's on the LeBlanc, whether it's in Eric Barrow, whether it's Adams later, and others in some of the other islands, whether it's Compton in St. Lucia, who at least had an altruistic vision of a unity among these islands to overcome the colonial division or divide and rule. But despite that initiative, they were never able to fully achieve that result, which is to say, to have free movement of people, free movement of trade in the islands. You may recall recently that 4 of the West Indian islands, St. Lucia, Barbados, St. Vincent, Dominica, they came up with an agreement in which there would be free movement of peoples and labor between these islands. But the question is, what is the motivation, or what was the motivation of these leaders? Many will not agree with me, but I suggest to you that the motivation was simple: to prop up the Labour Party administrations on each of these islands, to ensure that during election time you had advisors, specialists, persons moving to the island where there's going to be election to help that incumbent government, the Labour government, win those elections. So perhaps after the demise of Rosie, perhaps with the advent of this new administration in Dominica, what we have seen is an inexorable attempt to consolidate power and to ensure that a certain clique of persons, united by some vague labor principles, retain a stranglehold on the electorate by any means necessary. Now, no other persons know that as well as we right here in Dominica. No one understands the quality, or should I say the lack thereof, of political leadership in the islands as we speak. In fact, we have been the prime victim of that type of ruthlessness in political power. The whole question of interregional migration. It is not to enable poor people, children, to go and get jobs in certain islands and to build up their families and to generate intergenerational wealth. It is to prop up certain regimes at any means necessary. Why do I say that? What do I mean? Salisbury, was it in 2019? In which other island in the Eastern Caribbean would the mere mortally controlled RSS be sent under the cover of darkness to an island on the eve of a general election and tear gas an entire village associated with the opposition? You tell me, one of the panelists, I invite you to contradict me. In which of the other islands would that happen? You think they could do that in Jamaica? You think they could do that in Guyana? You think they could do that in Trinidad and Tobago? Or even Antigua? I have short shirts saying nobody could run me from the island from where we come from? No. But Dominica has been, quite frankly, the bête noire. You see, the low-hanging fruit in which everything bad about political leadership in the Eastern Caribbean is manifested. What about the assets of the states? These leaders in the Eastern Caribbean during that period from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, they sought programs and initiatives to improve the standard of living of the majority of their people. What are we doing in Dominica? Selling the soul of the country to save their own skin. Whether it's the sale of passports, whether it's the sale of parrots, whether it's the sale of citizenship, whether it's a destruction of the environment, the justification remains the same. For certain leaders and their cronies, lackeys, apologists, accomplices, to line their political pockets at the expense of their own country. Which leader, whether it's Adams, Barrow, any of those, Compton, LeBlanc, for God's sakes, even John, Edison James, would relegate their citizens to a status of second class in their own island? Which of them? What about accepting third party, how do they call it? Third party immigrants? Third party immigrants. And you know, this is promoted as an act of generosity by our leadership. Ah, that is so nice. The cause for humanity to give these refugees an opportunity to come to Dominica. But no, the justification is the same, to save their own skin, because the Americans have a dossier, should I say a criminal dossier, on many of these Caribbean leaders and their lackeys, I should say. And how better to try to weevil your way into the good books of Trump, the mercurial Trump, by offering and agreeing to accept refugees from God knows where, with what they're going to do unknown, where they're going to live unknown. The justification is simple: to placate the Americans, so the Americans might say, we will not prosecute them. We will give them a break. I think in legal circles, they call that espoir malpapai. So again, the justification is clear. Not national development, not the interests of the people, but their own personal pockets. I've talked about the whole question of citizenship. We've talked and we've witnessed, we've seen in many instances in a very agonizing fashion how foreigners are receiving opportunities to create great wealth in Dominica, while Dominicans who are just as qualified are overlooked. I know why, or one of the possible reasons why. It would be easier to get these foreigners to pay kickbacks. I'm not talking about crabbacks, to pay kickbacks to the political directorate. Yet again, the country is being sold. Now, should we even talk about the most recent manifestation of electronic manipulation? Should we even bother talk about this?
Wait, maybe you can talk about that in your second 5 minutes.
You're saying that maybe my mouth is tired, I should take a rest. I get the point. All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Andre. Thank you so much for these opening remarks. Now, Alvin, you have been in the system for quite a while. You know the ins and outs of CARICOM. Your thoughts on what's going on? You need to unmute your mic.
Yes, let me say thank you, Mr. G, and let me say a pleasant good evening to my fellow panelists. I'll start off with the rose in the room, Maslin Edwards. And it's a pleasure to see you, Maslin. I know that is a voice that I've been calling and trying to lend some reason to the conversation. And it's always good when we have a lady, a voice of a woman as part of the conversation. I'm sure you understand what that means, Mr. G.
Yeah, I know for sure.
But yes, it's a pleasure to be here, and my good friend Dr. Andre, of course, and Andy Jolly, the man who, as they say, Ipakamete Gloa Bushli, Pudisa ini Pudi. I'm not sure if he's really good at the Creole, but certainly he don't put water in his mouth to say what he got to say. But Mr. G, as we discuss this whole question of CARICOM, I want to kind of maybe sort of in some context, but a little just different to what Dr. Andre presented, and to state, first of all, what the average citizen in Dominica or the rest of the region in the Caribbean community, or CARICOM as we call it, what is their take on CARICOM? When they hear this word CARICOM, does it resonate with them, or is it just something above their head? And I mean, does it even matter? Because from the intellectual standpoint, the technical people, the technocrats, the government professionals might be able to well, more directly relate to it. But the average man on the street, you ask him the question, what of CARICOM? Do you know anything of CARICOM? Is that something that interests you? And I'm saying this to say, though, CARICOM is here by extension to provide for a good living standard for every citizen, for the citizens of Dominica and the citizens of the region. That is the premise, and that is why, in my view, it exists. So the average man or woman in Dominica or the rest of the region can, first of all, get a well-paying job. First of all, the economy is an economy that is succeeding, and they can get a well-paying job, and as a result, they can take care of their families. They could have a home, they could build a home, rent a home, have food on their table, put something aside for rainy days, and that, to my mind, is what I believe the intentions of CARICOM. Question remains now, is that being done? Are we seeing that? And I want to take us back a little, if you don't mind, Mr. G. And I want to reference what is called a Charter of Civil Society for the Caribbean Community. And that document was passed at one of CARICOM's meetings when CARICOM turned 24. That was back in 1997, to be precise. That was in February of 1997 at the Heads of Government meeting in Antigua. CARICOM adopted what was called a Charter of Civil Society for the Caribbean community. And it's important that we recognize that document, because it's supposed to be a living document. And it sort of dovetails into what I'm talking about as to what a citizen expects out of CARICOM. And in the preamble of that document, in the introduction rather, it says there, in the words of the commission, and they were referring to the West Indian Commission, and I think Dr. Andre sort of alluded to that. It says, in the words of the commission, quote, "We attach much importance to this proposal of the Charter of Civil Society. CARICOM needs normative moorings. We have found widespread yearning for giving the community a qualitative character, values beyond the routine of integration arrangement themselves can be judged, and to which can be made to conform. The charter can become the soul of the community, which needs of a soul if it is to command the loyalty of the people of CARICOM." That's what the charter is saying, unquote. It goes on further to say, the heads of government expressed similar sentiments in accepting the recommendation for the charter at a special session at Port-of-Spain, Trinidad and Tobago in October of 1992. Remember, that was 1992, and they only passed it in 1997. That's about, what, 7 years later. Convened to consider the report. The leaders declared in the Protocol of Port-of-Spain issued after the meeting, quote, that CARICOM Charter of Civil Society be developed as an important element of the community structure, of unity to deal with matters such as free press, a fair and open democratic process, the effective functioning of the parliamentary system, morality in public affairs, respect for fundamental civil, political, and economic and social and cultural rights, the right of women and children, respect for religious diversity, and greater accountability and transparency in government. Unquote. I'm coming to the end, Mr. G. Just give me just let me just conclude in my 5 minutes. And that is contained in this document. But guess what? It went further. The document went further, and in its preamble to this document, in the preamble I'm going to now, it says there, whereas, and it goes on, whereas we recall, blah, 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 determine, and I'm going to reference 2 areas where it refers to determine to the what. It says determine to promote economic growth and sustainable development through the wise use of the human and natural resources, and also to attain economic and social justice to pursue the goals of health, education, and employment for all. That's in the preamble. And that's in the Charter for Civil Society. And it makes reference also, there are at least, there are some 27 or what? 27 articles in that document, 27 articles. And Article 22 refers to social partners and what is expected of them. Article 24 refers to the awareness and responsibility of the people. And Article 25 refers to reports. Now, document on paper sitting somewhere and nobody knows what's in it, and the people of the region is not even aware of it. It's a question that needs to be heard. But I will dig a little further into some other aspect of it. But in closing, let me just say, as we are having that conversation right now on Global View, the Middle East is on fire. War has broken out. Israel did the first strike, and America supported Israel. So now there's a war between America, Israel, and Iran. A real war is going on as we speak. A real war. And the question remains, coming out of that meeting that just took place in St. Kitts, the question remains, what kind of impact is that going to have on us in the community in CARICOM? And I will finally conclude by saying that given the fact that Dominica, more than 50% of our food bill is dependent on America. That's where we get our food from. I'll share some information later on that. The implications can be very serious, not just for Dominica, but for the rest of the region.
Very true, very true. And you've witnessed what is going on in the region. You just saw the 50th anniversary meeting of the heads of government of CARICOM. Whatever the outcome was. I mean, I don't think there's too much of high significance in whatever came out of it. I mean, there wasn't any major headline, except, of course, the Prime Minister of Trinidad. I think her speech stood out to me among all the others. You're very familiar with what is going on in the region. You've seen what has happened to the U.S. in Venezuela, and what the U.S. is talking to is discussing with some of the countries in the Caribbean, the areas of discussion of U.S. interest. What do you make of all of this at this time?
Well, it's very...
Of course, I mean, let me just remind you, too,
Go ahead.
He's also talking about Cuba in the midst of all that.
Well, good evening to everybody out there. Always a pleasure to join your show. I'll get straight to the point because, again, I'm more on the business side of it. I'm really not on the diplomatic side. And for those of y'all who don't know, some people might say, well, why are you so interested in the money? Well, I was trained by an uncle of mine who's from Dominica. One of the things that he taught me, no matter which color you are, no matter which flag you support, the only color that matters to everybody is green. We have to go make some green. And really and truly, we need to start looking for our own economic prosperity. So I'll start off with Venezuela first, because Venezuela was a play to ensure that Cuba got out of the way, also China got out of the way. And if you've noticed, many of the discussions that would come from the political leaders of the world will tell you that Venezuela is probably better off today than it was previously under the dictatorship of Mr. Maduro. Cuba is going to be suffering horribly. And, I watched a little bit of the, I don't know what you would call it, CARICOM meeting, because it really wasn't a meeting. It was more like a social thing that everybody just got together, because there were not really any significant issues that were really discussed, if you ask me that. And I don't think, well, I wouldn't say discussed, but anything came out of it, because we have nothing really concrete that made any headlines. But one of the things that, we had our prime minister discuss was the fact that we in the Caribbean are choosing now to support Cuba and now to help Cuba, and we're going to do all these different things. Again, it's nice that we're making decisions as a community, but our problem and where we suffered really as CARICOM was we never made decisions as a community. And I'm a businessman here, and I can tell you one of our failings was that CARICOM was started on a very great premise. And Mr. Thomas just dictated to you exactly what that was supposed to be. It was supposed to be for better health, more regional security, increased prosperity, to really help our economic development as one people. And that has never materialized. The leaders of the Caribbean have always talked a good talk, but have been selfish all by themselves. And I'm going to tell you, in Dominica, the reason we are the way we are is because we have probably one of the most selfish prime ministers in all the Caribbean islands. I mean, you just put it out there. This is probably the highlight of the Caribbean, is our prime minister today. So what we are experiencing today is because we have literally decided to chart our own course, do our own thing, and really not follow the other Caribbean leaders. If you look at a lot of the other Caribbean islands, they've developed significantly more than us, simply because they've joined forces and they've taken the CARICOM issue as a holistic issue. CARICOM was supposed to mean that we're going to order all medications together and we're going to go out there and bid for the best prices. We were probably supposed to join together, and I don't know, if we order spaghetti from America or food from America, we were going to get the best price. So everybody in the Caribbean would have the best price. So if we offer something for sale, whether we make it in Grenada, we make it in Dominica or St. Lucia, we were going to market it to the wider region as us, one Caribbean, one CARICOM. And that never took off. Every man was for himself, and all the leaders really took their own country into their own hands. And it was one of the most selfish things put together. So, Mr. G, if you have to ask me, what does CARICOM stand for? I will tell you it's a failed enterprise because it has never worked. Now, is it a good idea? I'm going to tell you it is the only idea that can get us out of the mess that we're in today. And the only way it will work, and I see it working, is if we have to change leadership and get somebody who is dynamic in there, somebody that knows the way forward. But even though we get somebody like that, keep in mind, if we do not have everybody following the same script, I think it still won't work. But again, good idea. Our countries do not understand that we now have ideas that are going around the world, and pretty soon the ideas of America will be switched over to France. The ideas of America will be switched over to England. We all know that they're usually a little bit behind because they like to see how things work out. But those ideas are going to be switched to some of the bigger nations. And what we're going to find ourselves in, we're going to find ourselves in a position where we're all left alone on these little islands, God-given, beautiful islands with the most precious beaches in the world, but with nothing to support ourselves. So unless CARICOM doesn't come together and decide they're going to follow the script and they're going to get a dynamic leader, they're going to be able to negotiate with somebody, I don't think that will work. And in order for this to work, everybody has to fall in line. Nobody has to be left out. And I think that is the only way forward. Now, we've talked a little bit and see how things didn't work in the past. And Dr. Irvin Andre was so gracious to give us a little bit of history. But what a lot of people don't know is that our history is not a good history. Even today in the Caribbean, our political leaders are more fragmented than they've ever been. They do not agree on anything. Even today, we decided a few years ago, we're going to do electoral reform. Well, a good idea for electoral reform is say, hey, look at what Jamaica is doing. Look at what St. Lucia is doing. Look at what one of the other nations is doing. Why don't we just take the script and we put the script in place and everything should be fine? Not even that we can do. We have such selfish political leaders right now that guess what? Everybody wants their own. And CARICOM will never, ever work as long as everybody gets their own. The people in Barbados who follow Mayor Motley want their own because they're looking after themselves. The people who are in St. Lucia decided they want their own. St. Vincent wants their own. Jamaica wants their own. Everybody wants their own. But CARICOM cannot exist on that. We are too small. And not only that, we also have to realize we have people now looking at us because we've done a few things that are disagreeable. We have to understand that these people are looking closely at allies versus, and I don't want to call it enemies, but really and truly, if you're not an ally, you're an enemy right now. I think that's the way it's going because look at what's happening over in the Middle East right now. And I think the last part that CARICOM is missing, CARICOM has not figured out a way to advance itself. It has not figured out a way to keep up with the times. There's been no advancement in CARICOM. It's been the same old garbage every year. It's the same old garbage meetings. We've not embraced technology. We've not embraced any advancement. We've not embraced factories. In a day and age like today, believe it or not, we have CARICOM leaders negotiating for themselves. And Ross University for us, the loss of Ross University was one of the biggest inter-fightings that you will ever see in CARICOM. There's no reason that Ross University should have left Dominica. But again, selfishness always shows up in the weirdest places. So I want to open with those remarks and put those out there. But it's good that we got a little history. And it's good that Mr. Thomas gave us a little bit of factual information on what it's supposed to be. And I'm here to tell you as a businessman, businesses and any development that has so-called come from CARICOM really never came from CARICOM. I don't think anybody on this panel can give me one solid thing that CARICOM did together that actually worked and is actually still working today. Not even the tariffs at the customs right now are similar for all the islands. Dominica has some of the highest tariffs compared to St. Kitts, compared to St. Lucia. Believe it or not, even though we're supposed to be using the same tariff book, our tariff and our cost are even different. So how are we expected to be all the same people trying to get ahead on the same bus? There's no way it's possible. So I want to open with those remarks, and I can add more a little bit later. Thank you, Mr. G.
Yeah, thank you, Andy, for these opening remarks. When we come back to you, I want you to sort of elaborate on, give your thoughts on this tug of war in the Caribbean with the U.S. intervention in Venezuela, with Trinidad posturing and taking the side of the U.S. in terms of the problems that Trinidad has suffered with Venezuela and Venezuela's problems with Guyana as well. And of course, Kamala Prasad has been looking after the interests of her country. So we'll talk to us a little bit more about that when we come to you the second round. But Marcelin, let me come to you now for your opening remarks. You need to unmute your mic. Okay, here we go.
Well, good evening, Mr. Gregor, Justice Andre, Andy, Alvin, and Dominicans and non-Dominicans alike, listening at home and abroad. I am glad to be here as the only woman on this male-dominated panel. I don't possess any testosterone as the stalwarts on this Global View program tonight, but I promise to deliver in my own Marcelin Edwards style. First of all, let me say thank you for inviting me on this program tonight. It is my wish, Mr. G, that you will continue to have a woman as part of the panel, as it is a step in the right direction for balance and a different perspective. As we know, women have played very important roles, and they still play today. And that stems from the biblical times, through slavery, through segregation, and leadership in the political arena. Bear in mind, it was a woman who decided not to give up her seat on that bus that ended segregation. We have a voice, and when we join in the collective, there is no mountain we cannot move. And there's a lot we can bring to the table as well, especially on issues affecting women, children, be it at home or at the workplace. Mr. Jolly, I want to extend my heartfelt empathy to you and the entire Jolly's family, as well as Dominicans at home and abroad who still use or who still believe in the Jolly's products. This has been an ingenious business that Dominicans grew up to love, and based on the great products that you all offer. So I know it's a loss. Likewise, the other businesses that have suffered loss as well, I sympathize with them. I know it's not an easy time, especially in that type of economy. It's a dead economy where jobs are scarce, and families have a hard time, or they find it hard to provide for themselves, their children, and to meet their monthly obligations. But I pray for a speedy recovery of all those businesses. I know that those businesses will rise like the phoenix from the ashes, so they will grow bigger and better. Yes. Well, having said that, we have a specific topic on the table, and it is CARICOM. Today, we are in a political quagmire stemming from the Caribbean to South America, the Middle East, and worldwide. But what piques my interest tonight is our main topic of discussion, mainly CARICOM, an organization, I must say, that has lost its way from the ideals and principles of its formation signed under the Treaty of Chaguaramas on July 4th, 1973. Justin Andre gave the history of CARICOM, which is supposed to be a noble organization, the voice of reason and democracy to chart the Caribbean islands in the right direction as one Caribbean people and to strengthen our presence as a bloc internationally. Since given the size of each Caribbean island and its population, we the people understand that unity is our strength. In marketing, in trade, in production, we all know that more can be accomplished as a unified body. Seemingly, CARICOM is used for all of the wrong reasons, which leaves much to be desired. The character of the leaders elected today does not put CARICOM in any positive light. Give me one reason Ross University is sitting in Barbados, growing the Bajan economy, while Dominica's economy has hit rock bottom. We are at rock bottom. The people who invested in the Portsmouth area, those investments are left standing like white elephants. They were left with the bank to pay and no real income, no investment. I don't believe what passes for CARICOM today is what the noble leaders who were, Prime Minister Errol Barrow, Forbes Burnham, Michael Manley, and Dr. Eric Williams, the founding fathers of CARICOM, envisioned for the Caribbean people. I refer to the recently concluded CARICOM meeting held in St. Kitts and the stinging rebuke by the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar of the CARICOM leaders and how CARICOM functions. What was known to be once a noble organization seems to be the organization to protect only the leaders in government and not a representing body for all Caribbean people, including opposition parties. And according to Bissessar, she accused them of election meddling and kidnapping, where the plane of the RSS was used in the kidnapping of a Trinidad and Tobago citizen. Mark you, 2 other kidnappers were present at that meeting. I wish to remind the audience of Mehul Choksi and the leaders who were involved and the foiled attempts to illegally plane the man to India. Given what Bissessar said, maybe they should have used the RSS plane. We heard of the same RSS that came to Dominica to tear gas the people of Marigot and Salisbury for standing up to protect the legitimate process of the general elections in Dominica from illegal voters who were brought in by the plane loads to sabotage the results of the elections. The same plane used in the kidnapping of the Trinidadian men. When CARICOM leaders are accused of kidnapping and narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, then you wonder, where did we go wrong? Bissessar said that it seems to be a good old boys club. And this is something that we have reiterated for years. And we have heard all sorts of criticisms describing her statement as reckless. They described her as a betrayal of Caribbean political values. They even referred to her a drunk. But whether you like her or not, whether we support her geopolitics or not, whether we support the stance she has taken for her country with Trump and Rubio, what I am most certain is she has filled the red chalices with a good hangover. A good hangover of the stated facts that sent the culprits scurrying to their holes with no public response for the media. Colloquially, it was said that they don't wash dirty linen in public. To me, that's not diplomacy or brilliance. To me, that was, they did not have the response for such public humiliation in exposing a crime of that nature and CARICOM's aiding and abetting. A question was asked whether there will ever be Caribbean integration that allows the region to speak with one voice. I ask, wasn't that what the framers of CARICOM were trying to accomplish? For Christ's sake, CARICOM is about 53 years old. What are their accomplishments really? Besides using the RSS to tear gas people who are fighting to preserve their democracy. They say they are pro-dictatorship or pro-democracy, to be correct, while they use their power to assist the suppression of people who are under tyranny of 25 and 30 years government. How can they say they love democracy when they openly support illegitimate leaders they know for a fact did not win the elections, like in the case of Maduro? CARICOM, through their support for Maduro, supported the incarceration of all the political prisoners in Venezuela who were released after Maduro was taken into custody by the US military. CARICOM has supported the misery of the Dominican people under the quasi-dictatorship of Roosevelt Skerrit. That cannot be a CARICOM of regional unity. Such actions cannot promote a peaceful region when they have only openly displayed war on CARICOM citizens, on Caribbean citizens. Even if I would want to respect CARICOM or to have a little regard for CARICOM, based on what they did to the Dominican people when they deployed the RSS on Dominicans, the people of Marigot and Salisbury, I have absolutely no respect and no regard for CARICOM. In my opinion, the advent of Kamala Bissessar being at CARICOM now, I see that woman as a representative in CARICOM and the world stage for every oppressed voice in opposition. I believe opposition should gravitate to, since she has been there herself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Marceline. I mean, very well said. I mean, I'm sure you have a lot more to contribute to the conversation when you come back to the second round. But I want to go to Dr. Irving Andre. I don't know if Dr. Andre is with us. Dr. Andre, I want to, you see, Marceline raised the question there. Will there ever be full Caribbean integration? that allows the region to speak with one voice on issues like investments, like trade, like security, diplomatic relations. And the other question is, does CARICOM represent regional unity or political theater? So if, when you make your comments, could you try to address those two questions for me?
I will start with the latter question. Does CARICOM represent regional unity or political theater? Let me indicate one of the critiques of Kamala Bissessar in her presentation during that last CARICOM meeting was that the heads of CARICOM, they only have use for their fellow heads of government. They have no use for the leaders of the opposition. But virtually every Caribbean constitution says one thing, that the opposition is also an integral part of the government. You remember a few years ago, if my memory serves me right, and some days I question my memory, Lennox Linton went to Guyana during one of these Caribbean CARICOM or Caribbean meetings, whatever it was. They treated him like an intruder. They treated him with the clear message, you don't belong here. So these folks are a bunch of hypocrites when they speak of democracy. They don't care about democracy. They care that their pals remain in power, from Motley to the one in St. Kitts to the one in Antigua with a nice mustache. That's all they care about, because they have their little deals on the side. That is the sad state of affairs that we face as we speak today. CARICOM has been bastardized. It has lost its meaning. It has lost its significance. It has established a hierarchy of islands, those regarded as the most powerful and those who are at the bottom of the scale. Marceline mentioned about Ross, also Mr. Jolly. We are supposed to be brothers and sisters. Dominica is one of the poorest of the islands. So if a rich brother sees a poor brother losing a pair of shoes, then what is the obligation of that richer brother? You are my brother, I'm going to help you find your shoe or retain your shoe. What did me and Motley do? Give it to me, I'll take it.
Mhm.
And you remember what the head of Ross said? Dominica is not ready, because they made overtures to our leaders about remaining in Dominica. But some third or fourth level bureaucrat was sent to speak to the heads of Ross. That is the significance we placed on an institution that contributed upwards of 40% to Dominica's GDP. So we're not ready. And we're not ready because empowering the people of Dominica is not the primary justification of governance in Dominica. On the contrary, the poorer you are, the more dependent you are. And hence we have no bid contracts.
Marceline, could you mute your mic, please? Go ahead, Dr. Andrew.
And we have no bid contracts. We have the largest infrastructural development scheme in Dominica being done by foreign workers, with Dominican workers being given crumbs on the table. And they are fighting among themselves, many of these truckers, to get some of those crumbs. We have the landscape being ravaged and seduced and violated, with professional accomplices saying there's nothing wrong with it, on the pretext that we're looking for stones with high densities. This is a cynical violation of the environmental laws of Dominica, and they're doing it with impunity. And guess what? The unkindest cut of all, et tu, Brute, it's Dominican leaders who are doing that to Dominicans, not some foreigners. It's Dominican leaders who are doing so. So the whole lofty ideals which Alvin set out so eloquently, they've gone down the drain. It's a dog eat dog. There's not even respect for the lowly worker, the baker, the farmer, the persons who clean the streets. Absolutely no consideration. And a metaphor of that disdain for people was on display last evening with the fire. And my sympathies to Mr. Jolly and his family. I shop there all the time, quite frankly. I'm not going to tell you what sickness ails me, but that's not the point. The reports, not just Mr. Jolly, I heard him on Matt yesterday, but other people. There was one viable working fire truck at the scene. The hoses they were using licked like my garden hose. And the night before, there was a concert. The Dominican government spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on who? Dominican artists? But no, foreign artists. One of whom from Nigeria is a Dominican ambassador. So you see where Dominica's money is going to? Foreigners. Whether to sing God Save the Queen, well, I'm sorry, Lord, how great thou art, or whatever it is. Whether to perform in other avenues, the World Creole Festival, while Dominican artists are relegated to the background, quite frankly. The money, the wealth of the island is being frittered away and being given to foreigners who have absolutely no link, no interest in Dominica, quite frankly. The large majority of the people who hold Dominican passports through purchase, they haven't set a foot in Dominica. They don't intend to set a foot in Dominica. And quite frankly, the only regret they now have is that the United States, the United Kingdom, Europe to a significant degree is essentially shut to them, despite the fact that they spend so much money on buying Dominican passports. What is CARICOM saying about these things, Mr. G, or your panelists? Have you heard a word about concern? You heard Ralph Gonsalves, another Labour Party crony, talking about the opposition in St. Vincent, why they support the CBI program or why they want to be involved. But our Prime Minister is right under his very nose. He knows what happens in Dominica. He knows where the financial bodies are buried. Did he utter a single word expressing concern about the rampant sale of Dominican passports to Tom, to Dick, and to Harry? Not a single word. Because they operate as if it's a consigliere or whatever the word is. And that is what is dooming Dominica. That is what is crippling Dominica. Because the ethos, the principles and morals espoused by the originators of CARICOM, have all been frittered away, have been wasted, and a new theology based on fill your pocket is what has taken root in the islands. You just have to dig closely and you will see the evidence of precisely that in any of the islands, whether it's in Antigua, whether it's in St. Lucia, and God forbid, don't even go looking in Dominica because the evidence is all there. From the House of Dark Secrets to a hotel where the base floor is occupied by Tululu crabs singing, swimming merrily around. A boondoggle, pure waste of money. Derelict hotels being built, and the occupancy rate is 10%, and I am being generous. In most hotels, of the new hotels, not the established ones. That is the state of affairs that are being perpetrated in Dominica today. What about the whole question of crime, which Ms. Bissessar was so concerned about. And she has a right to. At least she's protecting her people. What protection has been afforded to the Dominican people? Do you even want to talk about law enforcement? Do you even want to talk about the types of crimes that are prosecuted and the types of crimes that are ignored? Do you even want to talk about unsolved crimes? Do you even want to talk about the unequal enforcement of law in Dominica? And we prayed about unity. I think the most recent iteration of the Prime Minister's speech I heard today, courtesy of Matt, there were gospels of unity being preached. Unity? You are sticking it to the opposition. You are victimizing them. You are vilifying them. You are vandalizing them. And you're talking about unity? Empty slogans, Mr. G. It's a shame. It's a crying shame. And Dominicans on the ground deserve more than this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Andre, for bringing up these comments. I'm sure that we will, in fact, discuss the CBI a little bit more as we go along tonight. But I wanted to, just before I go to Alvin, I know Alvin has a lot to add to what he had said previously. I wanted to just go over to Lambi and ask Lambi to give the numbers out to the listening public so that they could to call in and make a contribution to the conversation tonight. So Lambi, could you please give out the numbers? I don't know whether the phones are working. No, I know that there was an issue with the phones earlier, but give out the numbers anyway.
Okay, the numbers are as follow: 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257. Those are local numbers. The international or the overseas number is 305-432-9624. Let me run those one more time. 449-309-59697, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Stand by. We already have a call on the line. Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, gentlemen and the lady, I
Good
can
evening.
understand how Dominicans are sitting there and allowing terrorists to brutalize them like that. I was in the fire services. I left the fire services in 1974, migrated, and now in 2026, and you tell me that's the condition of the fire department. You have enough money, as the gentleman just said, to bring to those so-called singing gospel songs, and you cannot buy new fire trucks. It's unbelievable. You have money for the police to have all modern equipment, all submachine guns, all kind of guns. You have money for tear gas, and you cannot have the money for the fire department. But that is not new, you know. That's how the government of Dominica has always been, especially the Labour government. They never took care of the fire services. They treated us like nothing, and they always took care of the so-called police, who does nothing but to brutalize the people of Dominica. They talk about democracy. Dominica is not a democratic country. Dominica is a socialist country, communist country, run by a parasite they call Roosevelt Skerrit and a bunch of idiots supporting him. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks a lot. Lambi, you want to take another call or should we go on? Okay, so let's go on. Alvin,
Yes.
Let me go over to you. I mean, this article surfaced that, and Lambi, you want to take a call?
Caller, please go ahead.
Yes, Lambi. Good evening to you, Sheridan, the panel, and most importantly, let me say to the lady on the table with all the gentlemen. Guys, you know, I've been listening from when it started, and I would like to really put a piece in what I've heard all night long. Dr. Andre, your lyrical content is impeccable. My brother, you know how to put things in perspective, and you did it good. Not saying any less than to anybody else on the panel, because everybody made very pertinent points. on where CARICOM is. But I, as a living citizen of CARICOM, who have known the region for eons, I think CARICOM right now, as we speak, is non-existent. If we expecting anything from CARICOM, you're gonna get more of what has gone on for the last 50 years, if you ask me. Unless you change governance and the citizens of the region get more involved in the politics. Now, last month you had a election took place in Barbados, and the numbers show you where the people are right now. The people are disgusted with the region and its politics and the thievery of the leaders. Excuse me, Mr. G, I must say something. There are some things that sometimes I refrain from saying on the radio because sometimes I like to throw in some liquor street language. And scumbag is one of the words sometimes that comes to mind when I hear the discussion on the radio discussing people that we think are of high repute, like i.e. Prime Minister. Because today, the people who are in the region who call themselves leaders, Prime Minister, and the likes, and Attorney General, and what you call the Security Minister Officer, these people are not deserving of such title. When we give them that title, you give them a title because a certain caliber and a certain character hold that word to a much higher status than what I see in the region today. And they made a point that CARICOM was supposed to be a regional organization that looks out for the people regionally, no matter where we sit in that archipelago, but everybody fighting for themselves. And Mr. J, unless the people in the region rise, the stealing, the corruption, and always the devastation of the people's resources, i.e. Dave Wash and the likes. You know, as we speak right now, they tear down 2 mountains to build an airport that will say they give an estimate of 1.5 billion, and I continuously say that airport will cost any bit of 2-3 billion. Now, we had some results came back from a soil a geologist testing the soil, and he confirmed that there is copper, like it was tested back in the 70s or sometime around there when the Australian company was trying to get some mining done in Dominica, and people fought against it. And somebody mentioned earlier in the show before you, the people before had not the education that the people today has, but they stood up. They were much more involved and protective. The patriotic fervor in people then was much more than now, because right now, the selfishness of our people, i.e. the CO versus they're voting their interests and taking care of their business. You know, I often listen to people on the radio and they go after Trump because what is Trump is doing. Trump has not lied to the American people. He told them what he was going to do, and he did it. He said that he didn't want people from scumbag nations to his country, and he's doing that. He's putting people out. No, we don't like it, but sometimes we must face the facts and look at the action and the reaction of our actions. Do you understand what I'm saying? The reaction is we have done nothing to build our nations in the region. We stole from our people. We did all kind of stuff. Mine under there's the issues, the same issue in Jamaica. They sold to some American mining company when the people fought against it. That really after a lot of endemic birds occupied. They did the same thing with one of the same developers doing in Dominica while they're ripping off the land in Grenada. So when you listen to the regional news, listen to the issues that's taking place in the region and in Dominica, we are not alone. It's regional. And it's done in a manner of disregard to the people, total disrespect, all the criminal acts, all the passport, all these things sold, and no one has no account of it, and nobody stands and says, today is the last of it, we're done. We can't take it no more. In Debonch right now, they're destroying a river, they're tearing down a mountain, and the Kalinago people and the people of Marigot and these surrounding areas are going to be deprived of decent running water. They're going to be deprived of a place where they would go and swim and sometimes fish. And not only that, the long effects of this degradation, my brother, is going to destroy the marine life. It's going to destroy the ecosystem. It's going to affect other rivers, other water tributaries. The young people who did the study said it will affect about 5-6 tributaries that affects the Layu River Valley, the Debonch area, and many other areas. And what we do, we sit around. I hear people make excuses for wrongdoing and thievery and this kind of stuff. And all around the region, you all discuss rust. We could go on and on. And these things are not taken up by the people. The people who are tasked to take care of that and enforce the laws are the ones breaking the laws and standing with people. My sister mentioned Choksi. We could go on and on. So basically, I see CARICOM as a dead thing. I said thanks to Miss Cesar for speaking out, because she was the only one with balls, to speak up. All them others with balls, real balls, sat and said nothing. The state of Dominica, someone asked the Prime Minister what he has to say. In the interest of his island, in the interest of the region, he had none to say. Such disgraceful manner, man. Look, Mr. T, I'm listening. Thanks for the show tonight. I've always listened. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks a lot for your contribution here tonight. Lambi, you got any other calls, or should we go on? Okay, so Alvin, let me just go to you, and but just let me just point to your attention. There's two sort of headline stories that came out. One is the St. Kitts situation, where the CBI program seemed to be collapsing, and the revenue moved from 500 million to 150 million. That is from 26% of GDP to 5% of GDP. So that's in St. Kitts. Obviously, the US is talking to some of these islands, and it's talking to Dominica. And in fact, I believe today the Prime Minister came out with a statement saying that some agreement is going to be signed this week with the United States to take in deportees. So your thoughts on some of that as you make your
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Lambi, you want to call Lambi?
Caller in there. Please go ahead, caller.
Yes, good evening to the panelists. Good evening to Mr. G. Very interesting program. I'm listening, and it's very, very interesting. And I'm happy that the panelists have brought out many things that CARICOM is supposed to have been looking after in terms of its interest of its people. Rather, I believe it has become more of a government heads of discussion among themselves and what best suits them to see how they can advance themselves, not the people. Case in point, for a very long time, CARICOM has been promoting democracy, free movement of people. And obviously, I've not heard one of the purposes of the organization is to actually preserve democracy. But what I'm finding over the years, many of the countries in CARICOM, they have established, all of the countries have established diplomatic relations with Cuba, for instance. But the only thing they do is to discuss with Cuba and see how much compete with each other to see how many scholarships they get for their people, and to see how much attention they get with respect to bringing some social healthcare issues like eye care. When last has CARICOM sat down as a grouping and told Cuba to its face, look, Cuba, we have been with you for many years, but we feel now, as a government, you're supposed to free up the people of Cuba and strive towards going towards a democracy. Today, see the implication. They have been with Cuba, and look at the situation today. All of the efforts they have made, the big man just come in the room, elephant come in the room, Mr. US, and he says, look, you have to cut X, you have to cut Y, and they have to go with it. Look at Nicolas Maduro, for instance. Look at Venezuela. Nothing wrong. We have established diplomatic relations with Venezuela and most of the CARICOM countries. But some time ago, Maduro made it clear. He made it clear. that those perceived to be seen as interfering in Venezuela's business, internal affairs, they will run dry. I don't know if that means, though, the Petro-Caribbean nations, if they speak against Venezuela and they support maybe the US and other countries, adverse to their policies, that they will stop the oil from coming to their country because you have that privilege of the petrol. You can speak to your people, even if you have to look at it, even if I'm given food by any one of you there, I should be man enough to tell you all that the food is salty on occasionally. If you don't feel like giving me food again, no problem. But you cannot tell me in clear daylight, you have seen what they call an autocratic demonstration of governance in Venezuela, which has happened in Cuba for a long time. And you as CARICOM sit down there. You associate, you affiliate, but you cannot tell Cuba and Venezuela it is time that they move towards a democracy. I mean, that is something else, and I'll make my last point. I will only make that point because I've said it before in some program before, that notwithstanding the US has been deporting persons who've committed crimes back to their respective countries, because not now, because we see that we're going to get first country citizens, that the US have been deporting people. Most times, even if you get citizenship, if you commit a crime in the country, once your time is over, then they send you back to your respective country. I've made it my business to say, look, I don't know what CARICOM sit at the head tables to do. They have never thought of putting some kind of institution for training and to be equipped for when these criminals, because you have a lot of Caribbean criminals as well, who, of course, the US send back to their country. How are you going to manage these people? If the US, well, in the US, you have good management of criminals in the institution. But CARICOM has never sat down to discuss that implication for the country. Look at today. We are going to get them en masse. We don't know who we are getting, in fact. And are we ready? What kind of institution is made now? Which country can receive the most amount? Which countries can really host these people? And even if it's service, like security the other countries would be giving, then they would have discussed it. But every country cannot have criminals all over. It's like if you have criminals now spread it in the Caribbean and not centralized in one place that they can manage, and that will pose a problem for the citizens of the Caribbean. And so I always believe that CARICOM has not been responsible. And it seems to me that all of what Alvin has said with respect to what their purposes are, it appears that they are for good. In fact, I could even call it antiquated because for so many years, they have not revisited putting on the table at least affiliating countries that hold up true democracy and freeing up of people. Because if you're talking about freedom of people, you should be able to tell Cuba and Venezuela at the time, look, we are man enough, we are pro-democracy, and it's time that you pull up your socks. So I just wanted to make that point to tell you that these people are not interested in anything about development. Is what they can get. They can both, I get plenty scholarships. Medical scholarships there and there. I get this, I get that. No, it is not about that. It is about preservation and the true colors of who you are, and to preserve the integrity and interest of your people, so that at the end of the exercise, people can say, yes, CARICOM is doing something good. And my last point I will make, though, what happened is that it's true we have the CARICOM block, but think of it. Trinidad is wise, Jamaica is wise, Guyana is wise, even Barbados. Most of the trade, all the juice you see coming in, all the other products, you see Colgate products on the shelf, or toothpaste products on the shelf, it either come from Trinidad or Jamaica or somewhere else. What are the other Caribbean people doing? So they have not even been promoting trade among themselves, far less to actually stop thinking about just diplomatic relations and not strengthening trade with other big countries, like even China they are with right now. So it's just sad that we're in a state today where we are not self-sufficient, but yet we are talking about integration. Integration, we are not there yet. So gentlemen, that's a good topic. I think all the panelists, they are doing a very good job, and I want to commend you all for this topic tonight. It is something that needed for light to be shed on long ago. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your contribution. Alvin, let's go to you now. I hope you can make your comments now without the telephone call interruption for a couple of minutes. So
well,
let's go.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. G. Well, it's good to get the callers to call in and chime in. And I
Yes,
think that
of course.
is
Yes.
of the
Welcome,
exercise as
welcome
well.
the
It's
call.
not just us, but we want
That's
to
right.
hear what the people out there are saying too. So we welcome that.
That's
But
right.
before I make my comments, though, I too want to lend my voice to Andy and express my, you know, my what should I say? I don't want to say condolences because it's death. I don't see it as a death, but I want to share my, you know, my concerns and best wishes to him. By the way, Andy, in case you don't know, my wife worked with your dad many months away in the 70s, 80s as a pharmacy trainee when your dad at the time was dispensary. And my wife always talk about your dad. So we go back way, way back. And I know your mom very well, good friend. So I just want to extend, and we know the support that Jolly has provided to my alma mater, St. Mary's Academy. Orin is a strong you. Both of you are SMA alumni, and Orin is a strong, strong supporter of his school, St. Mary's, to the extent that you all have adopted our lab at SMA as the Elwin Jolly Lab. So I really want to extend, and like Maslin said, I think good things will come out of it. And so I just wanted to plug that in. But Mr. G, let me make a few points there, because I've heard a lot, and all what my fellow panelists have said, I subscribe to. 99.9% of it. You know, in teaching as a tutor, you always have to leave a little extra. You can't give them 100. I never give 100. So I'll say 99.9. But this recent held CARICOM meeting was held under the theme, Beyond Words, Action Today for a Thriving, Sustainable CARICOM. That was the theme. Normally, when an organization has an event, they have a theme which drives how the discussion goes and what, you know, actions that need to be taken. So that was the theme, Beyond Words. But I too would like to make a very quick comment on the Trinidad Prime Minister's comment, and to sort of, I always go back and do my research, and I'm a kind of history buff as well. And let me remind the listeners and the rest of my panelists here that back in 1987, at the 8th meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government, held in Castries, St. Lucia, June 29 to July 3rd, 1987. In 1987, CARICOM focused heavily on strengthening regional integration and overcoming sluggish implementation of previous agreement, particularly through the 8th meeting of the Conference of the Heads of Government in Castries, St. Lucia, June 27 to July 3, 1987. A key position adopted at this meeting was to actively engage with political actors, including ruling parties, and by extension, the broader political spectrum, to ensure the ratification and implementation of regional decision. You hear what was done? Key aspect of the 1987 position: strengthening integration. Heads of government agreed to prioritize the implementation of the Treaty of Chaguaramas and to foster stronger economic integration and functional cooperation. The Castries Initiative, as it was called, at this 1987 meeting, the Prime Minister of Barbados presented a concept to establish, the Prime Minister of Barbados, that was it. I'm sure Mia Motley, if she does the history, she'll go back. To establish a representative body that would involve the people of the region through their chosen representatives, including opposition parties. In the regional development process, later evolving into the Assembly of Caribbean Community Parliamentarians. Political consensus. The 1987 session was notable as it was the first time since 1974 that all member states were presented by their heads of government, signaling a renewed top-level commitment to overcoming political bottleneck. This era marked a shift towards involving a wider range of political stakeholders, ruling and opposition parties in the integration process. A move later formalized, you hear the word, formalized, in the 1990s through the establishment of the Assembly of CARICOM Community Parliamentarians, which grew from discussion initiated in 1987. So clearly what the Prime Minister did and said at the recent meeting in St. Kitts is in keeping with a decision taken by CARICOM that political opposition parties should form part of implementation was taking place. So she was right when she asked the question. I wrote to CARICOM as leader of the opposition and nobody responded. And CARICOM had a duty to respond based on that 1987 declaration that was passed. That was well over 49 years ago. So, Mr. G, it is important. Let me also state, Mr. G, in CARICOM dues, the 2022 dues, which is what I was able to access. Trinidad and Tobago, out of the 15-member CARICOM state, was the high, paid the most dues to CARICOM, $4.799367 million. CARICOM paid almost $4.8 million. That was CARICOM's contribution.
In Trinidad's contribution.
Trinidad contribution. Dominica contribution was a mere $151,639. They were right above Montserrat, which contributed $17,275. So like the Prime Minister say, who vex lost? Because not only she's speaking the truth based on the declaration, but she's paying dues into CARICOM to keep it functional and to do the things that CARICOM was meant and supposed to do. Let me go one further. In 2008, at the Conference of Heads of Government of Caribbean Community held on the 1st to the 4th of July in Antigua, CARICOM took a position at which our Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit was in attendance. And heads of government reviewed the situation in Zimbabwe. That was in Africa, all the way in Africa. Zimbabwe elections. The Caribbean community, CARICOM, has followed with great concerns the general election in Zimbabwe and the subsequent presidential runoff of 27th June. The Caribbean community condemns this unacceptable trampling of the democratic and electoral process in Zimbabwe, held in circumstances which made free and fair ballot impossible. These elections are totally devoid of legitimacy as they did not reflect the will of the people of Zimbabwe. Bear in mind, the Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit was at that meeting. It was held in Antigua. While acknowledging the complexity and sensitivity of the situation in Zimbabwe, the Caribbean community, steeped as it is in the democratic process, calls on the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and the African Union, AU, to use their best efforts to find a negotiated outcome to this flawed election in order to avoid a further deepening of the social, economic, and political crisis for the people of Zimbabwe and its harmful effect on the neighboring state, unquote. That was CARICOM issuing that. In 2020, we had elections in Guyana. And there is a report that appeared in the wiredjamaica.com on the results of the election. And the caption is, Guyana's bloated electoral list undermines democracy. CARICOM, OAS, and the Commonwealth must act. And here's what he said. In that, Ralph Gonsalve, who is no longer there, and I'll get to that in a minute, Her successor as CARICOM chairman, and she was taking over, he was taking over from, I think, Mia. Chairman Ralph Gonsalves took even a more aggressive stand, even going as far as telling the then president, David Granger, to take his licks like a man and leave power. One of the key recommendations made by the CARICOM appointed RECON team, so they had a CARICOM appointed RECON team, was that as a minimum requirement, Guyana should ensure a total re-registration of all voters, describing it as a minimum condition for electoral reform. Naturally, as the arbiter of the disputed 2020 election, one would have expected CARICOM to follow on its own recommendation. However, instead of ensuring implementation, CARICOM has remained silent. Many of the leaders and the individuals in the region who were very vocal in 2020 in defense of democracy have since disappeared from the conversation. I just referred to you back then. They call out Zimbabwe. Right here in our region, nobody said anything. We saw what happened in Venezuela, and CARICOM was also quiet. Let me just point out, ironically, as we know, had Ralph Gonsalves gotten elected at the last election, he would have been the longest serving member of CARICOM, with 25 years being there. He's no longer there. The next longest serving member in CARICOM is Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit. 22 years. He got in there in January of 2004. Followed by Gaston Browne, who got in there in 2014 with 12 years. Followed by Andrew Holness, he did 10 years, and Mia Motley, who got in there in 2018, May of 2018, 8 years. So in that 15-member CARICOM that you have, four out of the 15, headed by Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, have been sitting there for the longest time. All the other heads of government have less than 6 years, 6 years and less, 5. Grenada, St. Vincent, what have you, 5, 6 years, less. Roosevelt Skerrit is the Grand Lord in CARICOM with 22 years in there. And we saw when Venezuela had some serious irregularities with their elections. He was the first member of CARICOM to congratulate Maduro and telling people to stay out of interference and election history and fear. So I'm saying all of this to say, Mr. G, that is why we are where we are today. And the people are right. And it's fair to see CARICOM the way it is. Let me just conclude. You ask about the CBI. There are 5 members of CARICOM. Out of the 15-member CARICOM, there are 5 members who currently have, I'm not sure if it is how active it is, but currently have CBI programs. Grenada, St. Kitts, Antigua, Dominica, St. Lucia. Out of the 15. 5. At no time during the February meeting was CBI ever even mentioned, far less to discuss it. And we saw what is happening to members, countries of CARICOM as it relates to CBI. Dominica being a perfect example. We now have visas restriction. We have all kinds of restriction. And guess what? The two, I'm trying not to use any bad word on your program, Mr. G, but the 2 most questionable prime ministers, that of Dominica and Antigua, has the most restriction. Right now, you can only get 3 months, 1 and 3. No multiple 10-year, 5-year, that's gone. And on top of that, you still have to come up with a bond. Okay? CBI was never mentioned. Let's talk about the CS, what they call it, CSME. That was mentioned in PASA. No mention was made of food security. No mention was made of food security in the region. And the region imports well over $100+ billion spent in food. Dominica alone, in 24, I think, or 23, spent over $180 million in food imports, mainly from America. But no mention was made of food security. Neither in the outgoing chairman, which is Holness, or in the, what you call it, in the incoming, which is Dr. Terence Drew. So, I mean, it is just fair that citizens will have the mistrust and the concerns that they are expressing about CARICOM. In March of this month, March, they're supposed to have a meeting in Cameroon where they're to look at agriculture and foods and all that type of good stuff. Again, it just most likely will be a talk shop, because as I said in your February meeting, they didn't even discuss it. It's not mentioned nowhere. If you go through, Mr. G, and you read the entire remarks or presentation by Holness of Jamaica, that was not mentioned. If you go through Mr. Dr. Drew, Terence Drew, closing comments or his opening as the incoming chairman, no mention was made of food security. So we're in a very troubling time. And like I said in my earlier comment, when I made my opening remarks, we are likely to face the brunt of a war that is now taking place in the Middle East. And the fact that we are importing most of our foods from the United States, God alone knows what's going to happen a couple months from now when oil prices go up. Boats cannot come in to dock and to deliver the goods. So I think we better start tying our waists and figure out what is the right approach to do.
True. Now, Alvin and Andy, you know, it's instructive that Alvin mentioned the situation in Zimbabwe and CARICOM position there in terms of the free and fair election. And we saw in Dominica, Alvin mentioned Ralph Gonsalves. We noticed Ralph Gonsalves was on the platform of political party in Dominica during the campaign. We noticed Mia Motley was also as chairperson of CARICOM. She was also on the political platform of a campaign in Dominica. And you know, it is really instructive that our prime minister was the first prime minister of the OECS to encourage all the other OECS countries to join ALBA. And then, of course, he was the first to congratulate Venezuela on its elections. And he really said that outsiders should not interfere in the internal affairs of the country. But look at where we are today, Andy, and look at where Trinidad is today vis-a-vis the situation, the U.S. and Venezuela.
Well, it's quite interesting. There was the, you know, I hate to. Well, Alvin, there's one thing that, well, I don't know if you said it was wrong, but I'm going to correct you on. You mentioned about the boys' club. Keep in mind that Mia Motley is in there, although she can be considered as one of the boys. I don't think we should group her in, but a lot of what he said is correct, because just look at who's in there and look at the success of it. I mean, you have Roosevelt Skerritt sitting in there right now as the longest, and Ralph Gonsalves, although he was an amazing speaker because he was actually a really cool guy. You know, again, similar effect again, that basically there's very, very little that got done simply because of a lot of the ideas in terms of corruption. But our leaders have never respected freedom before. And even in Dominica, and I am 100% Dominican, I am here to tell you that a lot of times people say, well, we should expect free and fair elections. And I'm here to tell you that I don't think we'll ever get free and fair elections, because our leaders who supposedly feel like democracy is a good thing, right? But here they are worshiping or paying attention to countries like Cuba, paying attention to countries like Venezuela. They're down there taking pictures with Maduro. They're down there accepting money from Maduro. We're accepting, if you want to call it, help from Cuba, scholarships from Cuba. But guess what? Oh yeah, we're a really democratic country. We really want to see democracy in our country. But guess what? Again, it goes back to what your grandmother told you all the time. You become what you are wrong. Birds of a feather flock together. So here it is that we can understand why up to today, I don't think we've ever gotten a fair election in Dominica since we've had the Labour Party government in power. So we have to understand what's going on. I'm going to go back to Trinidad of Kamala Prasad, and I think she's a brilliant woman. First of all, I'm going to tell you, she recognized that it was a boys' club. And she recognized that these people are probably in CARICOM not following the right script. And I'm going to put a disclaimer in there. I don't know how Roosevelt Skerrit became the leader of CARICOM at some point, because his track record shows that he was the worst leader of CARICOM. Not that there's a best one, but he was definitely the worst one. But Trinidad has postured themselves very well. And Trinidad has always been one of the smarter nations. And here we are today in CARICOM, believe it or not, seeing that the prosperity that is being generated by Trinidad, seeing that the prosperity that can be developed if we follow the script that Trinidad is following. And I'm going to tell you why I think there's prosperity to be had. In terms of the last CARICOM meeting, and I take a lot of things away, but here's the simple thing that mattered to me. If you know, Kamala Prasad was the only one who was standing next to Marco Rubio, taking a picture, got time to spend with him, was talking to him. I mean, if Marco Rubio had a friend in the room, she was it. None of the other politicians got that kind of notoriety. So here it is that we can see exactly what the way is. But instead of following Trinidad in, and instead of saying, boy, Trinidad might have a point there, let us follow the money. Instead, we criticize her and say she might be a drunk. She don't know what she's talking about. We criticize. And Dominicans are standing for that. Because why? Because when Mr. Roosevelt Skerrit goes out there, apparently, in addition to all the so-called offices that he holds in Dominica, he's also a PRO as well. So Dominicans are being represented as the people who are not following Trinidad. Dominicans are represented as the other people out there who don't know and have lost their way. But I think, again, we have to take a hard look at this. Mr. Roosevelt Skerrit has been compromised. There's no way he can make a correct decision because his position is compromised. He cannot come back to the table and walk straight anymore. Venezuela is a very strategic move for the U.S. The U.S. now has a better stronghold on Venezuela. The U.S. is going to start changing around things in the Caribbean. And I'm going to tell you, the people who don't get in line with that change are definitely going to suffer. I'm going to tell you, President Trump, who I know, I've studied for a very long time, very serious individual. When this man tells you he's going to do something, he's going to do it. We need to start understanding that he means business. You asked me to talk a little bit on Venezuela versus Cuba. I think Cuba is going to be out of the race. Unless Cuba doesn't come up with a brand new government and start practicing some democracy, the communism or the act of communism or the idea of communism is going to go by the wayside. As we can see, Many people are watching Cuba right now, and it was a shame to see Mr. Roosevelt Skerritt on the TV monitors the other day say that we are going to help Cuba. Dominica is in no position to help anybody. We can barely help ourselves. So the idea that we are going to take our money, our time, and we're going to focus on trying to get Cuba out of the mess that they're in is crazy. I mean, if we do not have our prime minister check himself out, the next Cuba will be Dominica very soon. We need to understand, stay away from these types of situations. We're barking up the wrong tree. A couple of days ago, it was so amazing. I sat in my bedroom, and we knew an attack was, imminent on Iran. And they asked them, they talked to them, they threw out an olive branch. President Trump said, look, man, we've leaned over backwards to try to get you guys to the table. Just come over here and sign this document. If you sign this document, we could have peace in the region. Everybody would be happy. They did everything they possibly could. And I remember just sitting there watching, saying, this is not going good. And the next day, they killed over 40. That's a 40 for most people who don't know. 40 of
49,
the leaders.
49.
Is it still counting? Yes, still counting. 49 leaders in Iran. Because guess what? The guys didn't come to the table, and they didn't listen, and they didn't understand. And there was no way that we could achieve peace. So we need to understand that peace is imminent in the region, and what they want is a society that is understandable, that is fair, and that is equal for all people. And if you noticed in Iran, something strange, very strange happened, which I thought was the most craziest thing in the world. The one guy who got left alive, who was the president, is in charge. He says, we're going to retaliate. And I was like, this is not smart. And this is the same thing that I see our President Roosevelt doing. He's literally saying, we're not going to listen to Kamala Passad. We're not going to listen to Trinidad. We're not going to follow with the U.S. script. We're going to retaliate. And guess what's going to happen? The same thing that happened over there. So we have to understand the way that things are moving right now. We need to understand that we're in a society that is changing rapidly. We cannot stay as we are, or we cannot practice the same old things. Now, Mr. G, I'm going to spread some light on Dominica. Dominica doesn't have a very good history of change. So I'm going to localize things along to us. If you notice, well, our roads haven't changed in probably, I think, I'm going to say 40 years, because I've been around for 50. And when I was 10 years old, I was still kind of running on the same road. I remember the old market, and then we had the new market. And then when we got the new market, it was just been the new market, and I don't think there was a block change. They never passed a paintbrush on it. So Dominica is not one that has developed and changed. But a lot of that has to do with the political leaders that we have in place today. And I think we made a very, very wrong move. We chose the wrong people to lead us. And the people that are leading us right now are leading us right over the cliff. I hate to say it. And a lot of people say, well, Andy, why give such a dim view? Dominica will do all right. We'll survive, and God will take care of us and all that. But I hate to tell you, I think the leaders are going in the wrong direction. Now, we may survive, and we may do okay, but we won't do great. So I think Trinidad is posturing very well. I think Guyana has done a great job at making sure they posture very well. I think Venezuela is going to do good. The CARICOM has to get their act together. There's a lot of infighting, there's a lot of bickering, and there's a lot of mediocrity support for the Caribbean. If we do not get in line, I'm going to tell you pretty soon, we're going to lose ourselves, and we're going to lose the Caribbean, and it will be a shame to see that happen. But our leaders need to figure it out. And it is a shame. I'm going to tell you, it is a shame to be a Dominican, to see that we have Roosevelt Skerritt in there for 22 years, sitting there as a leader. And instead of leading the young people that are coming in down the right path, he's actually leading them the wrong path. But if you notice, not a lot of people are following them. And Mr. G brought up a very important point for people who don't know about the Send Kids CBI program. I don't know how many people follow the regional news very well. Those things don't get broadcast in Dominica, Mr. G. So if you're in Dominica, you'd never hear. In fact, mentioning the word CBI is almost, they're almost going to beep that out on the radio pretty soon because it's almost a curse word. But St. Kitts realized that there was a huge decline in the CBI program. And you know what's shocking? They actually recorded it as news and said, look, the decline in the CBI program is crazy. We have to do something about it. And they're doing something about it. You know what I would like to do? I'd like to give Mr. Roosevelt Skerritt a challenge tonight to come out on the radio or in his next press conference and tell us how the Dominica CBI program is doing. Because like he said, if not CBI, then what? Or everybody should get behind the CBI program. That's what builds our schools. That's what supports our NEP. That's what does this. And I think that's what builds his house. And that's what buys him a new Toyota Land Cruiser. And that's what got him the nice clothes that he wears in his closet and all the free travel that he gets. But guess what? I want somebody to ask Mr. Roosevelt Skerritt tomorrow, how well is our CBI program doing? Denise Charles comes out very often, Mr. G. I don't know if you've heard it. She's actually the queen of statistics for the team, for the Labour Party team. She often comes out and tells us, oh yeah, Carnival was up by 15%. The cruises are up by 20%. I would like to know what percentage the CBI program for Dominica is up, because I would like to really see that percentage. But I'm not going to say any more until I get those numbers. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. But also you can say, Andy, that from the increase in the cruise, what is the visitor expenditure? And the visitor
That's true, very true.
And also, if you look at the St. Kitts situation, where the revenue from CBI moved from 500 million to 150 million, I believe Dominica's situation is worse. And then, of course, when you look at what the US and the EU have done, the UK and so on have done with us in terms of visas, we're down to 3 months, one visitation in 3 months. Basically, I mean, all because of our bad behavior and a lack of due diligence in supervising this thing. So, Marceline, I mean, your thoughts on the rest of this? Unmute your mic.
Yes, thank you. According to Mr. Johnson Boston today, he said CARICOM has become an organization of expensive suits, and they just go to those meetings for the good time and the food, and they bring back nothing to their respective countries. That is quite an interesting description of CARICOM. And, you know, we have to agree, because when we listened to our Prime Minister, when he was asked about his country's position, he refused to speak. He's actually said nothing. It was just quite embarrassing. Even the leader of St. Lucia, to the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, I could not believe that this man gave such a response. Actually, I don't see them being prepared on CARICOM level to speak about any of the issues CARICOM wise. The man behaved like he was on some political campaign about St. Lucia. And those two, I just said, these people aren't ready for anything. Just like CARICOM is not ready for any serious talk about unity and zone of peace and the rights of Caribbean people. They're not ready for that, because if they were serious about that, they would have set up a committee, a small committee within themselves, to address the issues and complaints of the opposition and the supporters in minority. If they truly believed in democracy, they would not be calling snap elections all the time. They all are guilty of those snap elections. And the purpose of the snap elections is to decimate the unprepared opposition parties. Dominica did not have a leader of opposition for almost 2 years. What did CARICOM do in that regard? They supported it, yet they talk about democracy. A pro-democracy CARICOM will not assist a government to remain in office for 25 and 30 years. They will not do that. They will not leave their country and show up in other Caribbeans political platforms to campaign for the incumbent, then talk about sovereign rights when they habitually violate the rights of Caribbean citizens on their own soil. Ralph Gonsalves came to Dominica and told Dominicans that Roosevelt's carrot was the best leader for Dominica. I saw that plastered on the newspapers when I went into the Old Jolly's pharmacy. Those newspapers were on the countertop everywhere. And I looked at that, and that was written all over. Ralph's big belly taking up half of the newspaper. He said Roosevelt's carrot was the best leader for Dominica. But what he should have known is that he was done, and that Dr. Friday was the good leader for St. Vincent. How many of the Caribbean islands, as we're talking about, we're on the topic of democracy and CARICOM and where they stand. How many of the Caribbean islands in CARICOM are part of ALBA? Is ALBA pro-democracy? Isn't ALBA anti-America? Was that part of the reasons Skerry did not want American interest in Dominica? Hence the reason Ross was kicked out? Or was it the Chinese who gave him that ultimatum? When they attend those ALBA meetings, what do they really discuss? I would like to know what they really discuss at those meetings. And I'm wondering, is that where Skerrit developed the appetite to brutalize Dominicans and crack down on dissent, just like Maduro in Venezuela? Well, we are seeing now that the US has taken a stance under Donald Trump, or led by Donald Trump, on existing dictatorships. And based on what is happening around the world, I think Dominicans or Dominican people should rise up in protest action, where Roosevelt's carrot and Rayburn Blackmore will be tempted to send out their bloodhounds on the people. I believe that will spark the interest of the US. I believe it is the right time, because I think the Caribbean is at a tipping point right now. And when those opportunities are presented to us, we have to make use of those opportunities. Dominica did not benefit for the many years this man is at the helm of the country. I looked at the fire in Roseau, and it was just a hopeless situation to watch the fire overwhelm the city. Give me one reason based on where Jolly's pharmacy and the businesses are located. Give me one reason it took the fire truck half an hour to get there. We heard of a new city. We heard that the funds were there. They had gotten the loan. At one time, we heard it was a grant, and they were going to fix Roseau. They were going to make Roseau the envy of the Caribbean. What happened to that? We had enough funds, or enough. This government is rich enough, because when you look at the Mako mansions, they have more than one. Some have two, some have three. They have the most expensive vehicles, yet we have no emergency lanes. Roseau is just in a mess. You have no emergency lanes for emergency vehicles. And as a result, when there's an accident or the fire like we just saw happened, then it is chaos. There's no sprinkling system. There's nothing. I mean, when we talk about, tourism, we talk about, the percentages that, so many people coming into Dominica. But if there's an accident, how? What are we going to do? We have a hospital that is not equipped. It is not a health center here in the US is much more functional and much more equipped than the main hospital in Dominica. But while we are appealing to tourism, we are appealing to people who come from countries where they have the best healthcare, they have the best hospitals, they have several hospitals within the radius of 10 minutes. You have several hospitals you can go to. We don't even have we don't have a hospital in Dominica that functions as a well-equipped health center. And that is a problem when we see Dominicans dying for the least of reasons. The way emergencies are handled, they don't have proper equipped ambulances. You take a patient. The other day I heard Dr. Fontaine describe how a patient was taken in the back of an empty ambulance, just a shell, like when you're transporting animals, injured animals, to a veterinary clinic somewhere. There's no oxygen. There's nothing you just put the person, the patient, the injured person in the shell of a vehicle and take them to. Of course, the person will die because we are not prepared for any form of emergencies. And this is the genocide that happens in Dominica, where people die for no reason at all. All of those things could be avoided. But how do we get that? How do we get rid of that situation, that cancer in Dominica? We must remove that government. We must remove that government. And it's time that the people rise up. It's time. Look at what happened in Iran. The people were fed up. They rose up. Yes, many of them got killed, but look at what is happening today. Iran is due. It is on the way for a new regime, a new government. We don't know what type of government they are going to get, but I know the old one is gone. So I think it is time for us to rise up as a people, because it is our rights. We cannot have a government that whenever the people decide to go out on the street to protest, then your rights are being trampled on, like you have no rights. It is the right of the people. The people can protest. That is the only avenue they have when a government is not listening. And hopefully there can be some changes much sooner than later.
Thank you, Marceline. Thank you so much for that. I mean, this we're running out of time now. So, Dr. Andre, you, if you're with us, show your face. I don't. All right. So, Dr. Andre is with us. We don't see your video on yet, but your final thoughts on this?
Yes. Again, there's a dysfunctional aspect of the whole CARICOM phenomenon. But what is even more problematic is that there is what can just be described or summarized as a lack of good governance and a lack of any adherence to democratic values in Dominica. But what is more damning insofar as CARICOM is concerned is that our CARICOM so-called brothers and sisters have not paid any attention to the deterioration of democratic values in Dominica. They have not expressed any concerns. They have not tried to right that ship. Indeed, while many are vociferously condemning the United States, they are acting or they are mimicking the attitude of a former US president insofar as the Dominican Republic is concerned when it had its baby, its dictator. And that president is reported to have said, he may be an SOB, but he is our SOB. And that appears to be the attitude of some of these so-called Caribbean leaders who like to pontificate in bodies such as the United Nations, who appear to be holier than thou, who appear to be able to walk on water with their righteousness and their rectitude. But when you look closer, you realize that it is an unbridled individualism and selfishness that reigns supreme in the region. And unless we accept that unfortunate and that inconvenient truth, then quite frankly, we become aiders and abettors to what's happening in so many islands, most particularly to the nature island of the Caribbean. Soon it no longer will be the nature island of the Caribbean, because some of the minions of the political hierarchy are saying we will flatten that mountain to look for rocks. What they're looking for is copper. So there is no pretext, there's no pretense, there's no attempt to hide, there's no attempt to conceal the naked rapacity of governance in Dominica, the ugly face of it. It's in your face. Whether it's the House of Dark Secrets, whether it's a hotel that is slowly sinking into the ground, whether it's empty shells of hotels which were being built, but which now dot the landscape, quite frankly, which make a mockery of the so-called nature island. There's no attempt at preserving the environment, no attempt to clean up the environment. Every nook and cranny, derelict buildings lie unattended, hotels for Zebgwa, and no one gives a damn. So, the prognosis is clear. There's only one way to resuscitate the island, and that is to say, to effect a democratic change in leadership and to give the island a fighting chance to survive and to succeed. And that is my last word. Thank you.
Well, I'll come back to you for your closing remarks, but
if you say so.
Well, I do say so. I want to make a quick round of closing remarks from our panelists. Let me go to you, Alvin, for your brief closing remarks.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. G. Let me again say thank you and to the rest of my panel for this evening discussion. I know we've just touched the surface, the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that needs to be said as it relates to CARICOM's role. But just to say very quickly, though, as it relates to Venezuela, and to reference again two areas. At the 20th year of ALBA, which was, I think they had that celebration December 16, 2024, when they celebrated 20 years Here's what Maduro said then. Nicolas Maduro said, quote, "We must win the battle of life and truth in the streets, networks, media, and walls, as well as in the conscience and spirituality of the people." You hear that word? Spirituality of the people. Do you hear that word? Unquote.
Well,
Do you hear me, Mr.
well,
G?
well, we just had a gospel festival.
We must win the battle of life and truth in the streets, network, media, and walls, as well as in the conscience and spirituality of the people, unquote. Those were the words of Maduro when he addressed their 20th celebration, 20th year of ALBA TCP back in December 16, 2024. And in February 5th, 2025, when they had a follow-up meeting, the headline of that meeting, I think they did most of that via Zoom as well. I'm not sure if that was in person. The one on the celebration was in person. Quote, "We must remain united for the defense of our people. ALBA stands against Trump." We must remain united for the defense of our peoples. ALBA stands against Trump. And our prime minister was part of this conversation.
Yes.
So why should we be surprised now if United States says you're giving you only 3 months, or we don't want this or we don't want that? Don't you think that the same way I have access to that information, I've read it, that other persons in Washington and elsewhere are not reading it? I mean, why you they have a saying which must say have it over pool. If you're a cockroach, why are you going in front of the fowl? The fowl is going to pick at you. You know what I mean? So in closing though, Mr. G, I would just like to say though that usually when we come on your program, it's been said we bash, we says what is not working and what is this, and we don't give recommendations or we don't give suggestions as a way forward. And I would like to end with some hope and with a way forward. Of course, if the old board, as I've used that analogy before, and Andy can subscribe to that. If you run a company and you have a board of directors, even the founder of the company, and he's screwing up things, you get rid of him. We saw it happen with Apple, and we saw it happen with several other companies in the US. I live in the US and I've worked in corporate America, and that's how we operate. If the board and the chairman and the president are not working, even as a founder of the company, we're going to get rid of you and get a new board. Okay? So I think it is fair to say that that administration is not working after 25 years. They have done what they have to do. They have plateaued, as it were. And I think it's time for a renewed hope. I will add further that there is prospect and there is sign. Dominica is strategically located in France, between 2 French islands of Martinique and Guadeloupe. We're literally in France. We're part of CARIFORUM, which enable us and give us certain concession because of that membership. France has a population of close to 1 million people, right here, 10 minutes away from us. I mean, what have we seen in terms of maritime? There's prospect there. What have we seen in terms of trade? What have we seen in so many of the other areas? We have Dominicans who developed and helped themselves as hucksters going to the French islands over many years ago and before. So I'm saying this to say that there is still hope, and we need to take a different look at things. Whether this administration is able to do it, I'm not sure. But I'm saying that to say that there are opportunities out there that we can take advantage of as a people. So all is not lost. But I think if as we move forward as a people, clearly we're not on the right course of things. And therefore, the what should I say? The need for change, or the winds of change, need to take place in Dominica. So again, thank you, Mr. G. Thank you to the rest of my panelists, Lambi on the console. Always good to see you, and the rest of the folks who have stayed with us throughout the conversation.
Thank you, Alvin, for your closing remarks. Aslin, your closing remarks?
Dominicans, all is not lost. We are a resilient people. We are a people of faith. With the faith we have, we can move mountains. But what we must do is assert our rights and make demands. Let's make demands for electoral reform. Let us see to it that the process to register and to reconfirm is made easier, so that when the time comes, we will be able to vote this government out. We will be able to rebuild our new Dominica. But in order to do so, we have to get rid of the cancer. It is possible. This is our Dominica, and we have to stand to protect it by all means. Après Dieu, c'est la terre. After God is the earth. That is the earth that God has blessed us with as our gift. Thank you, and have a good night. Mr. G, thank you for having me. Thank you to the rest of the panel and to everyone on social media or via radio who have been listening this evening. Thank you very much. We do appreciate that you were here with us. May God bless us as a people. Thank you.
Thanks, Maslin. Of course, thanks to all the people, the good folks who are with us still on Facebook and YouTube and so on. Thank you so much for sticking with us and paying attention to what we're saying here tonight. Andy, your closing remarks?
Well, my closing remarks are probably not as hopeful as Marcelin's own. Marcelin, you might want to mute your mic a little bit because we can still hear you typing sometimes. So if you mute your mic, that'll be awesome. But my closing remarks are not going to be as popular and may anger some people. But here's what I have to tell you. I think it's too late. And I don't know how many people think it's too late, but I think it's too late. The reason why I think it's too late, here it is that we've chosen to go in the wrong direction. Our Prime Minister Skerritt has left us hanging. He has walked us down a path of unrighteousness. I don't know how many people read the Bible, but unrighteousness is not a good thing. We have embarked on a journey with the Chinese. We have no idea as a people how many MOUs that we've signed with the Chinese. That is even, I mean, we might be sitting here tonight talking about Dominica, and Dominica may not even belong to us. So we may be all wasting our time here to some extent. We have China, who is developing Dominica, but not developing Dominica for Dominicans. In fact, it is my firm belief, just because of the number of properties the Chinese own in Dominica and buy, which is a little crazy because here it is that the Chinese are allowed to buy land that many Dominicans cannot even afford, but they're allowed to buy land in Dominica and develop it. The Chinese are currently developing several hotels first in Dominica, in addition to an international airport, which is, who knows, definitely not for Dominicans because this is quite a big undertaking. $3 billion, who knows? The Chinese are developing a new marina for us and several other projects. But in addition to doing those projects supposedly for us, they're also doing some projects for themselves, as we saw in Deboash. I don't want to bring that up. That's a very sore thumb for a lot of people. So like I said, it's too late. And everything I said before that was okay until I'm going to tell you this next thing, that the Chinese are also building Mr. Roosevelt Skerritt House in Mont Daniel as well. So if the Chinese are building Mr. Roosevelt Skerritt's house in Mont Daniel, you can pass there anytime you want and see several Chinese workers outside. It's the same Chinese truck that delivers the stone and the cement and just about everything else. Who knows? You know, things get muddled. I think it's too late for Dominica. We've taken the wrong direction. We've gone too far in one direction, and we do not have enough energy to come back. So at this point, what do we do? Do we lie down, lay dead, and just wait? I don't know. I don't have an answer for the panel tonight. They've taken us in the wrong direction. He's joined the wrong groups. And even today, in last week, Kamala Prasad showed him the correct direction and said, Mr. Roosevelt Skerrit, this is the way to go. This is the way to get to the promised land. Came back with nothing at all for us as Dominican people. So I think our prime minister has set us up for failure, and we have to wait back and see what that failure really looks like as a people. So again, just my opinion, President Trump is a very serious president. I think the clamping down on Dominica, to tell you the truth, in fact, I'm not thinking here. I know the clamping down on Dominica has not stopped us yet. There is more to come. However, there were some more important priorities, aka the Middle East, to take care of before we took care of that. It's so strange to see how President Trump works. You know that Middle East thing? A lot of people thought that was about Iran, nuclear weapons. You know, really and truly, that's actually a way just to stop China from getting oil so that we can fix China. Not only that, it's a way to fix Russia as well. So if you notice, President Trump is building a lot of allies. And the allies that he's building a team. And we need to get on the right team. It's about time we wake up, because we do not want to fall asleep and wake up dead. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Andy. Dr. Andre, I am the eternal optimist, and I believe if we took the wrong turn somewhere along the way, we should reverse and go back to that and take the right turn right there and put the country on the right path. Your final thoughts?
I share that view.
Let me say before I give my thoughts, let me congratulate the panelists. I think they all did excellent this evening. They were very enlightening, and I think I certainly speak on behalf of my own scene and listeners that they would certainly endorse this motion, that they acquitted themselves very well. They spoke truth to power, a rare commodity in Dominica these days. But thinking of Dominica as we speak, we're reminded of Bonnie Wailer's I'm a Gideon, that song. We live in troubling times where children are making children. Pastors have become pagans. Prime ministers have resorted to pimping their country. And we are the poorer for it, at least those who are on the ground. But I share your optimism, Mr. G, because as long as the human heart beats within a body, I think there is always hope, as dismal as it is. Can you imagine what David felt when he saw that big hulking Goliath in front of him with his little Meg catapult? Don't you think he was trembling in his shoes? But he fired one shot and everything came tumbling down. And what about Jonah? Where was Jonah? Wasn't he in the whales inside?
Belly of the
Jonah probably said, "Mwe fini bat." Now, don't ask me how he got the hell out of that situation, but he managed through his resources, his cunning, his determination to succeed. And I think therein lies, in my view, the hope of Dominica, that within the body of each and every Dominican, irrespective of who they support now, there is hope, because quite frankly, very seldom will people play a role in their own demise, in their own social and spiritual death. And it seems to me that there is an awakening. The question is that, do we have the leadership to take that awakening to the promised land? And I certainly think that among the cadre of panelists this evening, among those who are not, who talk truth to power, among those who are uncowed, by the relentless nature of suppression in Dominica, and even among the most unlikeliest of sources. Because typically we look for leadership among the anointed, the educated. But when I listen to your program, whether it's on Matt or on whoever, I hear voices from persons with nothing to gain, with hardly any possessions, but speaking boldly, speaking loudly, speaking about the ills of our community and giving hope to all those who dream of a better Dominica. And so while I'm sympathetic to Andy, but I certainly think, and I continue to think, that there is hope. We may not know what time, what day, what hour, but there is hope. And that is a message I wish to leave to you and our listeners this evening. Thank you.
Well, yes, and of course, the hope lies in the fact that names are being mentioned. I hear Dominicans talking about Irving Andre and Alvin Thomas and Andy Jolly to take up the mantle to lead us to the promised land. I'm not sure what is going on, but anyway, it's just left for me to say good night.
No, don't leave out Marceline, don't leave out Marceline. You usually said who started the bus protest in America. You said
Marceline is right.
Very true.
I share her views because she's from Portsmouth.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, then, gentlemen, thanks a lot. And thanks to all these folks on Facebook, on YouTube, who's been following with us here tonight. Thank you so much for staying with us. And thank you, Marceline. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Alvin. And thank you, Dr. Andre, for your wonderful contributions here tonight. Let me say a very pleasant good evening to everybody. Take care, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure.
See you. Take care. Thank you.
Lambi,
My pleasure.
Take care, Lambi. Take care, Sherry.
Right. Andy, I need to call you. We'll talk. I'll get
You really need to call me.
Yes.
You know you always have my number available.
Yeah, man. I will.
So you can call me. Are you gonna give me some hope?
You on cue.
Yes.
Insights into where the people of Dominica and the
Marceline,
came
how's
from,
Portsmouth tonight?
understanding our past, embracing our present, charting the way
Can't
forward
hear you.
to our future. Together,
Turn
eliminating
on your
poverty,
mic.
embracing justice, peace, and togetherness. The Global View
I'm
on
not
Q. Networking Dominica
You
with
good?
the rest of the
think I'm
world. The
Portsmouth, but I'm
experts
not.
are in the house.
Actually, from
From
Malaga.
Dominica, Canada, the
1
Caribbean,
second.
the
I
United
can't